What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the new year. We are super excited to be back, or I'm super excited to be back actually in my studio as opposed to being out on the road. As many of you have probably noticed, it's been a very busy December into CES. I'm only just now starting to get my voice back to where I feel that it's actually comfortable to talk for a long period of time. So we should be good for this stream, and we've got a lot to talk about. I've got a couple things prepared where I took the cameras outdoors to show you some of the comparisons with stuff like the Sigma lenses, and especially with the telephoto stuff, and then also with some Leica lenses, like we said in the description, because I want to take the time to actually talk about what this update, what the S5 Mark II means for LUMIX, for the system, and then honestly just answer a ton of your questions. I've got the LUMIX subreddit open, so we've got a lot of people over there that are commenting, getting a whole bunch of questions answered and a bunch of questions asked there. I know that there's been a ton of questions asked on these streams. So like we said, I'm going to be basically taking a lot of time over the next couple of streams to be going through a lot of these questions. Yeah, we're just gonna kind of go at it. Let me see. Dave's Nature video looks washed out. Oh, I know why. I was playing around with the LUTs beforehand. Give me 1 second. So I was playing around with the real-time LUT functionality and just playing around with the different LUTs that I have available. So it was just messing around with them. So anyway. Now we're back to my normal 709 profile that I work with here, so hopefully that looks a little bit better. If you are new to these are the weekly broadcasts that we do here on YouTube. This is LUMIX Live. We've been doing this for about 3.5, almost 4 years, maybe longer than that. And they're all about you, the community, asking questions, getting answers, talking about tech, bringing people in to talk about their experiences, both in the photography and in the videography side of the industry. And just really to have a good time. Cameras like the S5 Mark II don't exist without the feedback that all of you provide, with people in the forums, people on the YouTube channel, giving us this feedback, telling us what it is you want to change. And then when we're ready and we're confident that the changes that we want to make based on the consumer feedback, on your feedback, are ready to go, then we release them and we get cameras like the S5 Mark II. We answer questions live during a broadcast. If you have one, tag at LUMIX Cameras before, or at LUMIX USA before your question. You just start with the @ sign, start typing LUMIX, it'll pop up. That just helps me find them in the chat and we can go through it. These are normally scheduled for about an hour for these broadcasts, but if the conversation is going strong, I will run them longer, especially over the next couple of weeks, given how many questions we've got about the S5 Mark II. But before we jump into that, if you are looking at getting a new camera or you have purchased a new camera, be sure to take a look at LUMIX Pro Services. Here in the United States, we offer the red tier and the platinum tier. The red tier is totally free. If you've just pre-ordered yourself an S5 Mark II or an S5 Mark IIX, once you take delivery of the camera, make sure to go to this site, get yourself registered, you put the serial number of the camera in, you get yourself on the program. If you're someone who likes, kind of higher level of service and support on the back end, make sure to take a look at the Platinum series. The Platinum tier gets you all of the benefits of Red, but adds in things like 2-day turnaround time with free next day shipping both ways. You get 20% off out of warranty repairs. You get an exclusive hotline that you can call in, speak to somebody if you've got issues. Annual sensor cleanings, firmware updates, all that good stuff, as well as you also get a pretty cool Peak Design strap that comes with it. As much as I love camera straps that we ship with the cameras, especially now with the redesigned strap lugs on the S5 Mark II, I really do have basically every other thing that I have is all Peak Design integrated. So we partnered with Peak Design to get you a really cool premium strap if you're looking at the Platinum series. So let's kind of jump right into it. Like I said, I have a couple things that I pre-filmed just because it was easier with the jumping all over the place. And we are actually using an S5 Mark II and a Sigma 24mm f2 from the DGDN series in human detection. So at some point I'll turn the UI on so you can see how all of this is working as well. But let's see here. Andy says, I really hope LUMIX gives us the option to disable 4-channel audio. This is one of those things that we have gotten the feedback with. It has been passed to the engineers to see if there's an option where we can push in a firmware update to toggle giving you all 4 channels or just 2 channel. So keep at it. Can't confirm yet one way or another, but it has been fed up to the engineering team. Let's hear. When will Panasonic make normal USB webcam support and get rid of tethering software? Most other brands support webcam directly and for video calls since around 2020. So yeah, it's partially correct. That was actually more of a 2021, 2022-ish thing where it was actually ubiquitously supported. It is something that's been brought up to the team as to, is it something we can do as direct in with the basic drivers that are included. At this moment, we still do require the use of the webcam software as well as LUMIX tether if you want to go that way. So unfortunately, no update there, but it is something that we are looking into. And then also with phase detect, is it possible to convert a camera to full spectrum IR with working AF? As Nick Driftwood pointed out, which, hello, Nick, theoretically, it should be perfectly fine. There are many other cameras that are PDAF on sensor, and they've been converted to full spectrum or to infrared. Obviously, with the S5 Mark II being so new, no clue. But it is something that probably isn't going to get tested out anytime soon unless someone is adventurous enough to go get their camera converted. I know I'm not. I have my S1R for that. But that's a good question nonetheless. Ruckus says, question related to the S menu settings. Any further plans to introduce a feature in the menus to independently assign video and photo white balance settings? Auto for photo, manual white balance for video. So, good question, actually. And I actually have my S5 Mark II here. We've talked about this before in some of the previous streams, but we do have an option for separating out things like white balance between the photo and video modes. When you go into the camera menu, you're going to look for Creative Video Combined Set. When you go in here, change all of these options to the camcorder icon here, and you'll see one of them there is white balance. So now what it'll be is that when I have the camera in PASRM, it'll be whatever white balance I'm setting and using for those modes. And then when I go to Creative Video mode, it'll be whatever I had it set for Creative Video, and they will forever be independently operating aside from each other. So yeah, it's an awesome option in the camera. It's one of the lesser known features we've talked about in the past. And I think now that the S5 Mark II has a much broader audience that is looking at the system, things like that will become more and more visible as more and more people start using the camera. Let's see here. Planning to buy an S5 Mark II in September. Love what I'm hearing about the camera. Awesome. Would love it even more if there was an announcement for a G9 Mark II with PDAF. So if you've never joined the streams before, even if I did know what's coming in the future, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I do like having a job. But probably the biggest thing, and we've gotten this question a lot, especially during CES, is that what does this mean for Panasonic? And there's been a number of interviews that have come out with our engineering team, with Yamane-san, our director, about how this is truly as much of a joke as we were trying to make with the new year, new phase. It is a new phase for Panasonic Lumix. This is a new chapter, using the other terminology for phase. The developments that you see in our cameras are moving forward, and we will consistently keep moving forward. We've said all along that Micro Four Thirds is not going anywhere. S Series is not going anywhere. The two tandem lines serve very different purposes. So while I can't give you any confirmed information or I can't deny any information, just know that this is a fresh start for the brand, and it's really kind of stepping into what in the S series the L-mount alliance means by having true 3 companies making first-party lenses, and then Micro Four Thirds always being the platform that we're able to push, faster tech, faster hardware because the sensor sizes and things like that. So stay tuned. This is going to be an exciting time for Panasonic Lumix, and if you've been with the company or you've been with the brand long enough, you know that we are committed to our users. We are committed to you, the community. We're doing everything we can to listen. Sometimes we may not be the fastest to move, but when we move, we like to make sure that that move we're making is accurate, that it is the right thing to do, and it's not, kind of a halfway attempt into releasing it. So yeah. There's that. Live view composite mode, astrophotography tips, any? I will actually be talking a bit more about things like live view composite on next week's stream, especially pointing out the fact that the S5 Mark II is getting live view composite. The S5 Mark II X is going to ship with live view composite in it just because it's coming later. So you will get that. It already exists in the S5. We're the only full frame cameras in the market doing it. So you will have that option in the S5 Mark II if you're looking. And I've got a bit more of a plan I want to do with astrophotography because I want to record some stuff actually out in the field instead of trying to kind of do it in this studio. I can't even try to pronounce your name. We will be doing more on that kind of stuff next week, actually. Let's see here. Dave's Nature says, planning on getting an S5 Mark II in February, just working out what lenses I'll need. I need a close focusing, wide angle zoom, and a macro lens. What is the sharpness like on the 14-28? So I love the 14-28. Is it a lens that that if I wasn't part of the company, would I buy that lens? Personally, I probably would go with the 16-35 f4, but that's because my priorities like the clutch focusing system when I do want to go to manual focus. But that 14mm is pretty sweet. Having the fact that it's half macro at 28mm is also nice. It's kind of really just going to depend, Dave, on what kind of subjects you want to do with macro or half macro shooting. How close do you want to be to your subject? Wider angle lenses that have macro capabilities, you need to be ultra close to them, which means you can get some more distortion while you do get a much closer field of view or a much closer focus. It's all trade-offs. If you're truly doing macro, going with an actual dedicated macro lens can be the much better choice. And actually sitting and saying, okay, my wide angle lens is my wide angle, my macro is my macro, and kind of going that path. At least that's how my logic is. But if you do truly just need one lens to do close-ups and ultra-wide angle shooting, that 14-28 is going to be a killer lens, especially if you're a video shooter. The thing is designed so that even if you zoom it, it still stays balanced on a gimbal. And it's got 77mm filters. Let's see here. Why the long wait for the Mark II X? This is a great camera, and I like Al's response. Black paint takes longer to dry. That is kind of funny. No, the truth is the S5 Mark II X has a number of extra features and capabilities that obviously the Mark II doesn't. We've already explained those or shared them out to the market, but for those that don't know, the S5 Mark II will be getting ProRes internal recording in 1080 and then over USB-C recording, so you can record to a USB-C device. Anything 4K up to 5.8K for ProRes you'll be able to do. That camera will ship with the ProRes RAW functionality over HDMI into the Atomos Ninja 5 Plus. Other RAW formats over HDMI are still under study. There's nothing I can confirm at this point, but just hang with us. Keep your ear to the ground. You'll obviously hear it from here when we're ready to talk about stuff. And also that wired and wireless IP streaming. What that means is that there is some subtly different hardware choices between the two cameras that allow us to do things like that, wired and wireless IP streaming, that are similar to like what the GH5 Mark II has. So sometimes things just take a little bit longer, but ultimately our biggest point with announcing both of these cameras at the same time is choice. We want you all to know what the choices are. We don't want you to, pick up an S5 Mark II and then find out, a couple of months later, well, here's the S5 Mark II X and, that's the camera maybe you really wanted. We want you to know what is actually coming. We don't want to have a situation where you get upset or, you're upset at us or you're upset at the dealer that you buy it from. We don't want you having buyer's remorse. We're laying the cards on the table with what we've got coming for the S5 Mark II and the S5 Mark II X, so that you, as better informed consumers, know what you're purchasing. So that's kind of why it's taking a little bit longer for the S5 Mark II X. Let's see here. Dennis, wondering if you'd consider using the S5 Mark II using real-time LUT feature for streaming. 100% I would. If I used the proper LUT at the beginning and had all my stuff loaded up, I would have probably been using that. But as I saw, I was washed out, so I decided to switch back to just basic 709. Generic says, how many of you survived CES without losing your voice? Not many of us. CES and trade shows like that are a grind. So usually you end up getting to the end of the show and you sound like I do. Even I'm not fully back yet, and it's been a little less than a week. So yeah. Let's see here. Wow. Tons of comments. I love this. I love this community. You guys are great. Good afternoon, Peter. There was a question about flashes from I Live for Holidays. Can anyone recommend decent flash and wireless triggers for the S5, S5II, and S5IIX, which work normally with these cameras? Yes, 100% I can. The Godox system is what I use primarily in conjunction with the LUMIX flashes that we have. Our flashes that we sell, they do enable some different features. Like if you're on an S1, S1R, S1H, our flashes are how you can get the 320th of a second flash sync speed for those that kind of need it. But truthfully, I use a lot of the Godox flashes. Some of the Flashpoint flashes are also really good. I think those are Adorama's flashes. And I use their X1 trigger for mine to do off-camera flash, and they work perfectly fine. TTL works. My high-speed sync works, if I remember right, when I'm using it on camera. I don't really do much high-speed sync flash or using the extended flash modes on it. But those Godox ones are great. As you can see, a couple of people commenting down there. They're a good, solid choice for it. DJ Electric, we have heard Lumix reps talk about putting a lot of R&D in video. What is the importance of photography-heavy use for Lumix going forward with S-Series? Some of us S1R users are curious. So, yeah, this is I think, a point in the industry where, maybe not in the industry, but in the current times of what the vast majority of people are asking for in cameras is they want hybrid. You want a camera that is able to do photo and video together. And while I know that that's kind of like nails on a chalkboard for some people, the truth is that is just where the market is going. That is where our world is going. More people consume video content than they do photography. Look at Instagram. As much as I hate that this is the fact, photos on Instagram do not actually go anywhere as much anymore. It's all about reels and stories and things like that. However, that does not mean that photography is any less important of a point in our world, in the Lumix world. There are a huge number of us in the engineering team, in the marketing team, in the sales team that are passionate photographers. What our big push with the video side is, and our innovation on the video side of the market will provide photographers, is better tools. So things like the autofocusing conversation, that primarily came about because, well, yes, we've been developing the PDAF system in this camera for quite some time now. We have listened. But knowing that the video users are much more critical with how the system needs to perform means that in the photography side, you see the benefits of the developments that are done for video because you're doing things like 24 frames per second, 30 frames per second, 60 frames per second. That means that it has to work really well in the photography side as well. When it comes to resolutions, working with resolutions that provide you the proper balance between dynamic range and noise and resolution, those are things that all have to come into play. Do people want much higher res sensors? Of course, we always want higher resolution sensors. When stuff like that is ready, sure, you'll probably see something come out like that. When that would come out, I have the foggiest idea. But photography is a core part of our brand. Things like Live View Composite wouldn't exist if we didn't have the basic know-how with the video side. Knowing how we can take multiple images, blend them together to create a long exposure image that's properly exposed. That is stuff that's going to be building and pushing forward more and more. The fact that the S5 Mark II is able to do 30 frames per second in electronic shutter while suppressing rolling shutter is kind of point of that. You know, we took things like 4K photo that was having to do it in video function. Now we're able to do it in full fat raw files. So you get a lot of these kind of things that intertwine with each other that on face value may not 100% look to you and say, oh, they care about photography. But no, we do. 100% we care about photography. Know that I'm one of the biggest champions of photography in with the group, at least on the US side. I'm starting to pull Matt Fraser a little bit more on my side with this one, if Matt's watching. Hi, Matt. But yeah, so photo is a huge part of it. Let's hear. Michael says, many of us Crave a cinema line with possibilities to grow within the ecosystem as your business grows. This isn't a question, just a tip. We do hear you. 100% we do hear you. If I had more info, I'd happily share that out with you. All right, I'm going to take a break from answering some of the questions. And what I'm going to do is we're actually going to talk about some of the lenses here and some of the functionality, because with the PDAF system and the phase hybrid system we're using in the S5 Mark II and the S5 Mark IIX, this means that the entire L-mount Alliance lenses, and this is something I cannot stress hard enough that a lot of people are missing online, Sigma and Leica lenses are not third party on this mount. Let me say that again. Sigma and Leica lenses are not third party. They are first party lenses. The three companies are developing around a lens mount and a lens communication protocol that all three of us have access to, which means if you buy the S5 Mark II and you pick up a Sigma 24mm, you pick up a Sigma 150-600. I truly wish I had the 60-600 in my hands right now. If you pick up any of those lenses, they are first-party lenses. What that means is that focusing is going to be the best that you can get. The differences will obviously be what focus motors does that company use in that lens, what were their design goals for that lens, so on and so forth. Certain lenses like this 150-600, as much as I love it, it isn't the fastest focusing lens, but from what I've read online, it is in general not the fastest focusing lens out there. But what it means is that used on the S5 Mark II, you're not going to get any less of an experience by putting it on here. You're not going to get any kind of like weird gotchas with the system, even to the point that image stabilization actually pairs with this lens. The way our system works with stabilization, when you're using a lens like the Sigma, in this case the 150-600, you have two options in the menu system. You can go for body IS, which is going to use just the body IS, or when you select lens IS, it'll actually be pairing the vertical and horizontal shift that the lens optics provides, and then the rotational information that the sensor provides. So you do get dual IS when you're working with lenses like this. It's something that even on the S5 you get. You just have to make sure you go into the settings and turn it on right. And I did some tests with this. So I want to actually jump to that quick video that I did outside showing you how the stabilization works on the 150-600. So let's take a look at past me. All right, so I'm testing the Sigma 150-600mm on the S5 Mark II, and we are in 4K 24p 422 10-bit long GOP. And for one, we're looking at the stabilization here. I have the camera set up with the lens stabilization, which allows me to use the optic stabilization for vertical and horizontal adjustments while still maintaining the camera's ability to do roll on the sensor. So this gets me an ultra stable kind of setup shot here when I have the lens set to option 1 for stabilization. Now if I take this and turn the stabilization off, so we'll go back onto the branch here. If I turn the stabilization off, you'll see how shaky I actually am here. Nothing has changed in my hand holding position, but now we're going to flip it back to 1. See how stable that shot actually is. So this is actually comparing for our dual stabilization, just maximizing what's available in the optics capabilities and paired with our in-lens or our in-body stabilization. Big differences between our dual IS and this is that with dual IS we have full control over pitch, yaw, up, down, left, right, where this, because of the options that are available in the lens, we have to also kind of balance that out. But you do get a dual style stabilization when you're using this, as long as you tell it that you're using the lens stabilization system in the menu, not just leaving it to the body. Now if I change this to mode 2, you'll see that results are a little bit different, but what mode 2 on this lens particularly is designed for is to be able to do panning shots while still maintaining that stabilization for, say, like bird tracking or things like that. Mode 1 is going to be much more locked off, so if I try to pan and move, you see you get a little bit of that kind of judder as it tries to hold the position. But this provides an incredibly stable solution for anyone that wants to do wildlife or, you know, kind of maybe not ultra fast action wildlife, but where you're kind of picking off subjects while they're, you know, either nested or you're doing some level of tracking. And again, we'll turn the stabilization off in the lens to show you just how shaky this footage is out at 600 millimeter in this 4K 24, and then back to turning it on. So now one last thing to note about this, like I said, I'm doing this handheld, so you'll see the inevitable kind of like jerkiness to my handheld nature while I'm also trying to talk, and I have the camera to my face to try to provide that extra level of stability. But the reality is the vast majority of people that would be using a lens like this for bird spotting or, you know, this kind of photography, you're probably using some sort of gimbal tripod head, or you're using some sort of, you know, system that allows you to keep the camera fluid and movable, but removes any of that little kind of judderiness that handheld is going to give you, especially when you're working with a lens that's out at like 600 millimeter for field of view. This just really opens up those options for users that do want to get some really good solid shots, especially if you're going to be working in the video sense. Like I'm in the video right now in 4K 24, and I'm at f6.3 at 180 degree shutter, and you see jumping just between these two branches means that I can reliably move my focus point here. And I'm using just the one area plus option that's built into the camera. Since right now there are no animals in my particular tree out here, it just makes it a super easy, you know, kind of offhand setup if that's what you want to use. So yeah, with the Sigma lenses, you can see there just how effective that stabilization system is, and then obviously the fact that our focusing system works really well. You know, you're not getting any kind of pulsing in the background, even when you're out at 600 millimeter, and you're really pushing that compression on that lens. So using long telephotos is going to be a super fun experience for those that really do want to work with, you know, some wildlife photography. Now, just to be clear, we are not billing this camera as a sports camera by any means. So knowing that going into that camera, you know, what is it designed for? Do you want to get into some birding and wildlife photography? Cool. The camera can keep up with you for the most part. Is it going to keep up with every individual little subject? Maybe not, but that's not what we designed it for. It's got some chops there. I mean, I loved taking the camera out during the testing that I was doing with the AF system, you know, photographing motorcycles as they're whipping by at 40 miles an hour around a hairpin turn. And I was able to land all 200 shots of that frame going through. If you check out over on Instagram, I've got a little reel set up showing it. And that was on early firmware too. But something to talk about actually with the focusing system before we jump in and start going on with some of the other lens options here is, so right now we're looking through another S5 Mark II that I've got set up here, and I actually have a 50 millimeter Apo Summicron SL lens attached to this camera right now. But when it comes to the autofocusing system on this camera, something that a huge number of people have just not been talking about is that depending on the mode that you're in, and I'm actually going to put this into the photography mode for this demo, depending on the mode that you're in for photography, when you come in, you'll see that you have the AF custom settings options here. And we've had these for quite some time now in a lot of the LUMIX cameras, but they're more useful now with the PDAF system, with the phase hybrid system that we have. So if you're doing anything where you're just general walking around with the camera, it's going to come out as set 1. That's going to give you your basic functionality. That's 0 sensitivity, 0 switching sensitivity, and +1 motion prediction. It's a general use case. If you're someone who knows that you're going to be focusing on something like, say, football, or maybe not football, but in our example here, it's trains and airplanes, things that are moving in one direction fast, where it's a predictable direction that they're going in, go into set 2. This is going to tune the system. You'll see you get faster sensitivity. The switching sensitivity is actually pulled down a little bit, and the motion prediction is pulled down a little bit because it's a known path that subject's moving. When you go to set 3, this would be things like football, basketball, where your subject switching is going to be moving a lot. The area that you want the thing to move to is going to be a little more unpredictable. moving subject prediction is actually boosted up because those subjects change direction randomly. It's not something that's as predictable. And then for me, with the motorsports, with tracking the motorcycles, I need quick switching sensitivity and I need quick subject motion prediction for photography. That's how I can get, of those 200 shots that I take, I can get all 200 of them in tack sharp focus through the entire frame. A lot of people out there that are new with the system, may have not ever really worked with our stuff, understands that we have all 4 of these modes, similar to what the other brands have as well, so that you can tune it for your particular shooting style. And it makes a world of difference. Unlike with the DFD contrast system that we used previously, where those settings, a lot of you have probably had, okay, I would do +3, -2 for my focusing setup for video. You don't have to do that anymore. 100%, once you start getting these cameras in your hands, start all of your AF settings at 0. Start them all at base. Then do your testing and see how you want the system to perform. We've done our best job based on the feedback of the testers that we've worked with prior to launch to tune the focusing based on their feedback. But there are an infinite number of ways that everyone likes to use their focusing. So we give you that control to go in there and customize them. And each one of those sets, you can tune them independently and save it into that set as well. All right, let's jump back to some of the questions here before we talk about the Leica lens. Trinimedia, can you touch on the differences with the Mark II and the X model for video? Is there a different crop factor for higher frame rates? No, the crop factors are going to be the same between the 2 cameras. The big difference is that the S5 Mark II X gets ProRes, like we said. You can do up to 1080 internally onto the SD cards. 4K and above has to go to the SSD. You get the raw output included on the product, as well as that streaming, that IP and wireless streaming functionality. And you also get the really slick black design, which is honestly so badass. I'm after 30 seconds in the video, so saying that won't flag my video. Let's see here. Renderman, for 3-year warranty, do I need to register the camera in 1 year or standard warranty period, or is it limited time after purchase, like 30 days? I believe it's within the first year. But typically, as soon as you get the camera, just make sure you go and register it. In the box, there'll be a QR code if you buy it in the US. Just go to that page, just get it registered. It's probably just the easiest, simple thing. Dennis says, does the S5 Mark II X come with 4K in 48p in ProRes? At this point, I'm looking at my charts. I do not see a 48 frames per second in ProRes, but I will have to check further on that for you, Dennis. Does the new AF in LUMIX S5 Mark II work in 120 FPS, face and eye, continuous AF, HD or UHD? So when you go up to some of the higher frame rate functionality, you will notice that there will be some differences. This is something that has been brought to the engineering team with the feedback we've been getting from users. So at this point, I'm not comfortable answering that just yet. I need to get some more information from our team as well. Let's see here. Will there be any additional differences between the S5II and the S5IIX if you pay $200 for the feature license? No. If you are on an S5 Mark II and you want to do the raw unlock for HDMI, that's the only thing that gets unlocked on the S5 Mark II. The Mark IIX has some different stuff going on with it that allows us to do the rest of it. Let us see. Can we do raw video with oversampled 4K from 6K? At this point, I do not know. I do not have a raw key for my S5 Mark II yet. Plus the recorder, the Ninja 5 Plus, I haven't seen one that has a firmware out that supports the S5 Mark II yet. So at this point, I don't know. Knowing our past and the way we handle RAW over HDMI, no, it will not be an oversampled, so you won't have 4K in full sensor width. The reason for that is that if you are doing any of that stuff to the RAW footage, it is not RAW anymore. RAW footage is pixel to pixel. That is the definition of it, basically. So if you want to be able to do the downsampling, shoot it in the 5.9K. You've got the full sensor width. You can then downsample in software, and you're going to get a really good result out of it that way. Let's see here. Why ProRes RAW needs an upgrade? It was integrated in the S5. This is a great question. Thank you for asking it. So this is the exact point that I was mentioning before. We listen to the community. The number of users that have come out and stated, okay, this is great, that you've got all these video features in the S5 Mark II. We just had the question before about photographers. Where do photographers sit in our positioning with Panasonic LUMIX? RAW over HDMI is a feature that a small percentage of users are actually going to take advantage of or will ever have a need to use. So the logic with the S5 Mark II and the S5 Mark II X platform is that, well, we can hit a lower price point by not including it. By making it a paid option for those that do want it, cool. You've got it. It's only a $200 upgrade. And at that point, you can also just do the $200 upgrade into the S5 Mark II X. You have options. But for photographers, for people or hybrid shooters that lean heavier towards the photography side, you shouldn't have to pay for something if you're never going to use it. Now, that is a dangerous statement for me to say, because then it usually gets followed up in the community by, oh, well, why don't you just take out all the video features and make the camera cheaper? Well, the fact is it doesn't work that way. Features that are external or things that may possibly cause licensing or R&D development, stuff like that, yeah, sure, those things can cost money. And like any business, you're going to add them in, and that usually is what raises the price of products. In the case of this camera, we can take out ProRes RAW. We can take out RAW over HDMI for those that are never going to use it and don't want to pay for it. So cool. We took it out. If you're a photographer and you're looking into this platform and you know you're never going to need things like ProRes or ProRes RAW, it's just not something you're interested in, the S5 Mark II is the perfect camera for you. If you're someone who's just dabbling in it, you have no use for ProRes features. You're not going to be doing the wireless or wired IP streaming. If all intra is something that's not important to you for your particular workload, save the couple $100 and get yourself an S5 Mark II. The S5 Mark II X is still a great camera if you're just someone who really loves the style of that camera like myself. Yeah, go with an S5 Mark II X though. It's all about choice. It's about making sure that all sides of the market feel that you've got a camera for you, because you do have a camera for you. We did listen to what our users had been telling us and what we've gotten constant feedback from. So yeah. Let's see here. DJ Electric, some reviewers rightfully stated that the shutter wheel is quite sensitive to being touched while the camera is bumped up against something. Option to easily lock that operation would be great. Yep, I have gotten this feedback. Personally, I think just because I've worked with the cameras forever, I don't do it, but that does not ever mean that that's the right way to view or judge something. We do have Operation Lock built into the camera that will let you temporarily lock all the dials. I think it was Terry Warfield, his post or his video about the camera did also point out that with our cameras, you can swap which of the dials is doing your aperture and shutter speed, so you can flip it. And I believe Gerald Undone also pointed out that, at least I think it was Gerald, that you can set it to synchro scan, so that if you do happen to bump the back of it, you're only moving it by 1 degree instead of multiples. So there are some different ways to do it. These are all stopgaps, I know, but it is something that has been brought up to our team to see if there's something they can add, maybe software-wise for it. Again, I make no promises, but this is what we do. We take the feedback from all of you, and our team is working on it. Hell, in the side from when we first had the cameras out, we've already had, I think, maybe 4 or 5 firmware updates internally that all fix and update things. You've probably heard some of the people out there that have had hands-on with them say the same thing, so... My life, will Panasonic unlock PDAF on the GH6? No, the GH6 does not have PDAF pixels on it, despite what some people are trying to spread as rumor out there. That sensor does not have phase detect pixels on it. You have to have a sensor that has the hardware to do it, unfortunately. I am sorry. Okay, let's see here. Could you, even though you can't talk about specific secret cameras, at least talk about Micro Four Thirds from Panasonic? I will buy an S5 Mark II, but I don't want to carry it and lenses uphill. So, like I said, Micro Four Thirds is a core part of our business. I get that I am an employee of the company, and I do work in marketing. Full transparency. You all know that if you've been following the stream long enough. But the truth is, Micro Four Thirds is a core part of our business. It has been. We are not going to abandon the Micro Four Thirds users out there. There are too many lenses. There are too many users like you out there. Myself included, Matt Fraser included. There's a lot of times that we prefer to go to our Micro Four Thirds cameras just for portability and in general some of the functionality. I mean, hell, the GH6 has 4K 120 downsampled from the full sensor width. You can't do that in full frame yet. So the Micro Four Thirds platform is moving forward. Do not worry. There's just not anything I can share with you at this point. Even if I did know, there's nothing I could tell you about at this point. It takes a little bit of faith, and I know in a brand that's always a hard thing to do, especially coming from someone like me who obviously I work for the company. I've worked here long enough. I know how everything works. But at the same time, I've worked here long enough. I know how things work. So, yeah. Let's see here. Hopkins. Hey, Dan. How's it going? Oh, and everybody, if you don't already, go check out Dan's channel, Hopkins Films. He's done some really cool video comparisons with the S5 Mark II using adapted lenses on the MC21. Go show him some love. Go show Dennis some love. Those guys work their hearts out on this kind of stuff, and they're a wealth of knowledge as well. So shout out, Dan. Awesome work you're doing. But yes, I knew this question was coming up, Dan. Is internal 6K with HDMI out and human detection on the radar, or is this processor limitation? This is something that has been brought up to our engineering team to see, is this hardware? Is it software? Where is the limitation? Is it something that can be improved upon? At this moment, I just don't have an update for anybody yet. Obviously, things are moving incredibly fast since CES. So as soon as we get information like that or updates, you know that we're going to be talking about that stuff on this stream. So now is that fun little segue that if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, like the videos if you like this kind of content. We do it all the time. For those that are just jumping in, I know that you just jumped right in on a YouTube shill kind of point of, hey, subscribe to me. But no, this is the platform where you're going to find a lot of that information. So if you do like this stuff, if you want to keep hearing more about this, if you want to see more videos about this, make sure you get subscribed because we do this every Thursday at 2 p.m. And we archive them. So if you miss one, don't feel bad. You can jump onto the recorded session that we have that comes after it. Let's see here. Scullerhead, another regular. Will you move forward and update also the first LUMIX S line, S1, S5, and S1H? You also forgot the S1R. For those that have the S1R, I want to make sure that you know that we have not forgotten about you either. As far as firmware updates go for some of those other cameras, honestly, I don't know. I don't work with that team day in and day out. So as far as firmware planning for what's going to happen on previous gen cameras that are using non-L squared engines, I truthfully don't know. To be fully transparent with you, I would imagine that yes, we will be doing firmware updates on cameras still consistently. We always do try to wring as much performance out of a processor and a sensor as we can. But there is that reality that sometimes you do hit a wall. Sometimes you hit just a straight up, I can't get any more out of this. That's where the GH5 Mark II came from. So I can't make any promises, but I can tell you that our team does look at maximizing every bit that we can out of the cameras when we can. Carlos says, do you foresee autofocus improving? Of course. This is Panasonic. Oh man, in the years that I've been with the company, which is a little over 7 years at this point, I think we have definitively been the company that provides usable, actually viable updates to the cameras. So you know that when we bring out a camera, we are going to support it, especially when it's in something like a flagship product where you're seeing that there's just that many eyes on it. And I'm not using the word flagship the way I think a lot of people use flagship, the Halo product, the top tier. Flagship in my mind is what's the camera that everyone is talking about, that everyone's interested in. That's what I reference flagship as. But yes, firmware updates and improvements and refinements are something that we have taken very dear to our heart when it comes to developing these. If you read any of the conversations with the engineering team that have been posted recently, if you read the comments from Yamane-san, if you listen to the streams that we had all of last week, if you've ever listened to LUMIX Live before, improving our systems based on what you all use on these cameras, the feedback you provide, that is something that gets us to where we go. Like I said, we may not be the fastest at getting there, but when we get there, we tend to do it right. So, let's see here. What is the quickest way to change from video to photo and have custom settings for both? I talked about this a little bit before. Go into the camera menu, go to the gear setting, go to create a video combine set, and set up all of those options to look like that with the camcorder icon. This way, when you jump between create a video mode and the photo modes, your options are set independently from each other and you have a true hybrid camera there. So now with that, I'm going to give my voice a rest for a moment, and let's talk about Leica lenses. So I recorded something a little bit earlier, it was actually yesterday, on the Leica SL 50mm f2 Apo Summicron on the S5 Mark II here, and we're going to talk about that. All right, so now that we've taken a look at the long telephoto lenses from Sigma, let's actually take a look at the Leica series lenses. So I am fortunate enough to, at the moment, have a Leica 50mm Apo Summicron here that I can play around with. So we're going to take this and connect it in over HDMI. We're going to look at the menu options. We're going to show you how the focusing system works. But also, I want to talk about that compatibility side of what the LMAT Alliance actually brings to the table for everybody. So, unlike what we used to think of when you're looking at third-party lenses or quote-unquote third-party lenses, the LMAT Alliance is set up so that whatever lens from Leica, Sigma, and Panasonic you're going to be attaching to, at least from my perspective, the S5 Mark II, the S5 Mark IIX, they're going to act as first-party lenses. It's a standardized communication protocol for the mount. It's a standardized physical setup for the mount, which means that we don't really have that logic of, well, it's a third-party lens. They are functionally first-party lenses across the board. You're not going to have any kind of limitation as far as image quality or performance in an inherent base, whatever lens you use. Where you may see some differences is strictly going to come down to, well, what focus motors were used in this lens? When did the lens come out? Is it an older lens on the L-mount platform? Or is it a brand new lens? Sigmas with their, say, DGDN versus their HSM lenses. These are going to be the little differences that you see between them. Is it a lens designed for the DSLR era, or is it a lens designed from the mirrorless era moving forward? And the reason we're looking at the SL lens, or the 50mm Apo Summicron, is that when I go in here and I look at the overall setup, you'll see that as far as autofocusing performance goes, while I have this set up right now in 1 area plus, because I don't need subject detection in this mode, I just need it to be point where I want it to focus, I can come in here, throw a lens on it, and it focuses right away. It's locked on. You're not getting pulsing in the background. Move it away, it goes right back to where it was. Move it again, and I'm right back on that target. Move it away, it's right back where it was. So the focusing works seamlessly, just like the LUMIX series lenses and the Sigma series lenses. But where you get an added benefit when you start looking at the Leica series lenses is that if I flip this to manual focus and then go into the menus, some of you may know that we have linear and non-linear manual focus control. So if you're someone who likes to use these lenses and you like to manually focus, or you're still used to manually focusing and you're not fully prepared to go and let the autofocusing system work 100% for you, you have the ability to come in here, change this into linear manual focus, go down into set, and then actually change what degree of rotation the lens is going to offer you. So right now I've got it set to 360 degree. What that gives me is that if I want to rotate the lens or the manual focus ring from near to far on the full extent of the focus range, it will take 360 degrees or one full rotation of the lens to get there. What that gives you is ultra smooth transition as I focus. You see you get a nice smooth transition through the range. You get your focus peaking that tells you what actual focal plane you're in at the moment. And it just makes it nice and simple and straightforward. But I also have that ability, if I'm, say, a street photographer and I know I want to be able to move from near to far really fast, I can come in here, click the menu button, go to linear, and then go back to set, And I can change this all the way down to 90 degrees. Now, the trade-off by doing this, by going to 90 degrees for how coarse you want your focus to be, is that if I need to make fine adjustments to my focus, you'll see that it is nowhere near as fine as working with, say, 360 or a more kind of fine. I hate using the word fine over and over again, but it's a more fine control over the steps that the focusing system or the manual focus system goes at. So while 90 degree is great for moving to and from focus really quickly, I can pull focus as a street photographer if I'm used to using that. I can pull focus really quick from near to far, but any fine-tune adjustment is going to be a lot harder. So that's also why with these Leica lenses, you have that full control from 90 all the way out to 1080 or maximum to be able to come in and say, I want the true ultimate control over just the most minute detail. So say you're a macro photographer, you'd probably want this set to be much on the longer throw side because every millimeter of focus is going to be much more important than necessarily getting to and from that point really quickly if you're using your macro lens for manual focus. But you don't have to rely on that anymore. I can very quickly just flip it to continuous focus. I'm in AFC now. And again, with this, I can just very quickly throw a lens in front of it, have it focus, move it away, have it move back. And these are the default settings right out of the box. So yeah, as you can see with the Leica lenses, you're getting a true seamless hands-off experience. It is first party. You're not having to worry about, how is the system working? What options do I go with? Do I have to give up anything to go with something that's a non-LUMIX lens? You don't have to give up anything. They are first party. But let's see here. There were some questions here, and as I see, Matt Fraser's in the chat, so thank you, Matt, for jumping in. I know as I sent you a text before. Thanks for the support. This is awesome. There's so many questions in here, and as a reminder, everybody, we're not going to get to all of your questions. I'm going to try to get to as many of them as we can today, but we will be back next Thursday also doing another topic on the S5 Mark II. We'll probably lean a little heavier towards the photography side that way because I want to make sure that we are not overburdening this camera with the video features. I know to the video users out there, you're like, yeah, no one cares about photography, but trust me, this is a stellar photography camera as well. But let's see here. For those that may not be reading the chat, there were a couple questions here that Matt was able to answer for us. One of them was, will the cages for the S5 Mark II work for the S5 Mark II X? As Matt pointed out, absolutely. They are the same cages, so you do not have to worry. And truthfully, in my personal preference, after playing with a bunch of these cages, I really like Condor Blue's layout for their cage, especially if you're a video shooter. I think it's really nice. I also like the color too, but that's just me. Let's see here. Can the S5 Mark II X simultaneously record while streaming? Unfortunately, I do not have an S5 Mark II X that I can test any of that stuff on. So that's one of the reasons why, if you've asked why we're not talking much about the Mark II X, it's because I don't have one. I can't really talk about it if I don't have it in hand. Since the fan on the S5 Mark II is under the top of the camera, if you mount a mic on the shoe, is there a chance fan noise could be picked up by the mic or not? In the entire... See, when did I start shooting with this camera? Back in August. The entire time I've been using the camera, I've only ever had the fan kick on once, and that was at the low setting, or normal that we have in the camera. And even when it was on, I couldn't hear it. I moved my head, even when I had my face to the camera with my eye to the eyepiece, I could not hear the fan. So the chances of your microphone picking it up, especially if you're using a directional microphone, are slim to nil. The internal microphones are designed to mask out any kind of audio that you're going to pick up from it. There's a really good interview with the engineering team and the product team in Japan where they talk about the placement of the fan in conjunction with the microphones. I can't find that link right away, so unfortunately I can't drop it in the chat. But if you look up interviews, you'll see them. I think some people have posted them. Actually, I think Dan Hopkins posted it in the Facebook groups. But yeah, I've never been able to hear the fan on the cameras. So let's see here. Let's see here. Will the S5 Mark II or S5 Mark II X be available with inbox kit lens? Yes, both cameras will be available as kits, at least in the United States. Kit variations depend on the region that you're in and what that country decides to put together as a kit. In the United States, which is the only region that Matt and I can speak for, there is the K, I think it's a K kit, which is the 20 to 60 millimeter. So that is this lens that you can get as a kit with it. So yes, you can get a kit with it. Let's see here. Is live streaming coming to the S5 Mark II? Not in the sense that the way the S5 Mark II X is designed. If you want to do live streaming with the S5 Mark II, you would do it like how I'm doing it, which is HDMI out into a capture card. Let's see here. Hey Richard, love. Okay, that's Matt. Where did we go? There we go. Focus limiter on the GH6. Why does it hunt for focus beyond the limits that you're set? It'd be way more useful if it stopped. I haven't seen that before, but I'd have to check. I know we have focus limiter on the S5 Mark II now, though. So, let's see here. Remember, if you got questions, tag at Lumix cameras so I can see them. Can you confirm the video bit rates for all intra on the S5 Mark II X? Currently listed spec shows 800 megabits, but V90 cards can't support that. Must be for USB. Yes. So, this is a combination to a question I think Dennis also asks here. I think it was Dennis about the different bit rates. So ProRes, you're able to record in camera. You're able to do up to 600 megabits per second to an SD card. That would be in any codec, in any recording mode, period. That is the maximum that will go to an SD card. Anything above that, you are pressing the range of what SD cards are currently spec'd to do. Yes, a V90 card says that it should be able to, but the fact is that you're not accounting for any kind of loss or manufacturing inconsistency, stuff like that, if you stick directly to that number. So, the S5 Mark II X will do up to 600 megabits per second to the SD card. As an example, your ProRes 422, because these are specs that you can find on the pages for the S5 Mark II X. Your ProRes options on the Mark II X in 4K start at 811 megabit per second. So that's where you're capped at. It doesn't do 4K to the SD cards. You have to go to the SSDs for it. So a little bit of a change there. Maybe not the best for what everyone wants, but that's just how the system is set up to work. So let's see here. And that'll be the same for the all intra options. If you've looked at a GH6 before and how we have an all intra option that is an H and L. L can go to the SD cards. That'll be 600. H will be 800 megabit per second. That has to go to the SSD. Let's see here. Steve, this is a very good question. Will the firmware upgrades for the focus on lenses cause any issues when you're still using an S5 body? I have both, as I only just got the S5 prior to launch. No, you can update the lenses. You're fine. There's no issue there. The lenses, most of the firmware updates that you're going to see come to the lenses are going to be more on the zoom lenses. Yes, we did update the 50 millimeter as well, the 51.4. But most of the updates are going to come for things like zooming while focusing, which you can't do on CDAF systems. You need the phase for that with ours. So yeah, you update your lenses, update your camera firmware. If you're already getting ready for that kind of stuff, I'm going to drop the link in the chat. Get your firmware updates ready to go. You can follow the link in the description. That's got the 16 to 35, the 20 to 60, 70 to 300, and 50. The remaining lenses, things like our 24 to 70, 70 to 200, 24 to 105. We should be pushing firmware updates for those soon. But just know that, yes, we are going to be updating our lenses. So, let's see here. Are the S5 Mark II and the GH6 close enough to get improvements on one side over the other? The improvement stabilization comes to mind and the LUT handling. So, not really. The S5 Mark II uses the L2 engine, which is a different engine than what we're using in the GH6. This processor that we're using is what enabled us to do a lot of these things, to confidently add phase detect now without any kind of image quality degradation that our engineers have on their benchmarks. So at this point, yeah, there's not really anything I can say is, will the GH6 get updates because the S5 Mark II can do it? That's a bit of a stretch. You can really never confirm between two product lines. Though they share a lot of similarities, it's not always a guarantee that things will be shared across both fields there. Thank you, YouTube, for jumping all the way down to the bottom in the chat. Let's see here. Does linear focus motor with the new 60-600 make it better with the S5 Mark II versus the Sigma 150-600? This is a good question. No way to answer it yet, as I have not had chance to put the 60-600 on the S5 Mark II, so I honestly don't know. But know that you actually have a really solid autofocusing system on the camera now, so you've got some pretty good stuff there. Trey says, the S5 Mark II is supposed to have PDAF detection points down to -6 EV. Could you provide us with information at what aperture value this sensitivity reading was acquired from? I have to look into that. I meant to look into it before the stream, but I ran out of time, so I will have to take a look at that. YouFollow says, is there a Discord LUMIX group? Not that I'm aware of, but there is a subreddit over on YouTube that's r/LUMIX that's run by the community. We don't have any, we don't run it. It is run by the community that I pop in there every once in a while, and there are some really good users out there and some really cool feedback. So definitely take a look at that. If you wanted us to create something like a Discord group, let us know in the chat. Actually, not in the chat. Let us know in the comments after the video if that's something that you'd want to see. We're always looking at better ways that we can reach out to everybody. I personally love the live streaming functionality here that we can do. So yeah. Let's see here. Richard Wong, Sean sneaky show off new Fast AF shirt. Oh yeah. Yeah. That probably didn't look good at all. Yeah. These are the shirts we had at CES. So super fun. I needed something clean that had LUMIX on it because I'm still doing laundry and all that stuff from back at CES. Let's see here. The S5 Mark II and the S5 Mark II X are game changers and will likely bring me back to Panasonic, all things film. That is awesome to hear. We would love to have you back. Don't worry, we won't rib you too hard. LUMIX cameras, time code on the S5 Mark II. So I think this is a bit of a miscommunication from a lot of people, is understanding what is meant by some people when they say time code. The S5 Mark II and the S5 Mark II X have time code. They send it out over HDMI. We use that for triggering with external recorders and stuff like that. What you don't have is jamming time code into the camera like you have on a GH6 or an S1H. So a little bit of a different system. These are cameras that typically in this price point, you're not seeing that. And for typically this category, you got to go up to like an S1H or a GH6. You got to go to top tier to get some of that stuff. So yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't have time code in, but it does have time code. It does record it, and it will send it out over HDMI into a recorder. Let's see here. Will proxy video files recording be added? It would be great if we could simultaneously have files with baked in LUTs for fast turnaround, as well as other files in Vlog. Proxy files, as Matt has said right below this, we've asked for it. As soon as Matt and I know anything about that, or we hear anything about it, we are going to be talking about it. So at this point, we don't have anything that we can share, because we honestly haven't gotten any updates yet. But it is something that's been brought up to everybody. All right, the last video that I want to show here that I pre-recorded is actually about the lens that we're using right now for the stream. I'm using the Sigma 24mm f2 DGDN. This is part of their I series, I believe, using the full face and eye detect on this camera. So to prove that, what I'll do is I'm actually going to go into the camera menu here, and I'm going to make the screen look crazy for a second. And there you go. You'll see, hey, I'm using face and eye detection. Woo, autofocus. But there are things that you want to make sure of when you're going to be using lenses and you're going to be changing lenses on cameras. A lot of us have bad habits that we get into when we're going to be changing lenses on cameras. And now, specifically in the modern era, not just for us, but for everybody, there are things you want to take into account with the way technology is growing. So let's go to past me to talk about some of those things. Right now, I'm using the LUMIX 24mm f1.8. I'm in 4K 60p 422 10-bit, as you can see right there. And I have the UI up so you can see what's actually happening. And one of the parts that our system has, and the fact that we know that there's going to be some people that have mixed lenses. You may be using LUMIX lenses, you may have Sigma lenses, you may also have some of the Leica lenses in your kit, is that you want to change those lenses. You want to be able to move them between different systems, or move them, change the optics that you're using on the camera. And when you do that, traditionally, even though we're not supposed to, sometimes you'll change lenses without actually turning the camera off. And the truth is that is a horrible practice to do these days. As lenses become smarter and cameras become smarter, and there's a lot more communication dependent between both pieces of the image pipeline, you have to make sure that you are knowing that when you make a change to a lens. If you were to just up and change a lens like right now while I've got the system running, you can cause kind of adverse situations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually power my camera off. We're going to leave this running live, and then I'm going to put this Sigma lens on, and we're going to go through and show you some of the focusing characteristics of it. So right now, you'll see that I'm using face, human, and body detection. So this is the human detection option that we have on the camera. So that means I can do stuff like present to camera. It knows like, okay, hey, now it's got a box over it because it's a human figure. It's my hand. When I back out, it drops to my face. It knows where that is, and we're good to go. The focusing on the Sigma lenses is going to be identical. So let's actually change this lens out and show you what that function looks like. So now, as you can see, we're on that 24mm Sigma. It's an f2, where we were at f1.4 for the, or 1.8 for the LUMIX lens. But now that it's been powered up, you'll see that we have stellar performance. It's the same level of performance that you would get on the LUMIX lens. So I can quickly do product presentations. I can have it jump up. The subject detections work perfectly fine. And it gives me that true native performance. Now, the only difference that you're ever really going to see in this case is just really what motors are being used for the optic and what the goal was. So with the LUMIX lenses, we all know, and we've talked about this over and over and over again, our lenses were designed so that we have minimal focus breathing, and they've had to use really high precision linear motors for the autofocusing system, because our DFD system, or our contrast system of previous gen cameras, was so demanding on the lens. It ultimately means that while we're in now the phase era of our focusing system, now adding that addition on top of DFD for subject recognition, our lenses are basically overbuilt. A lot of the lenses that you'll see from Sigma, so the DGDN series, have been designed with phase in mind already, so you're not really going to see many firmware updates, to my understanding, at least in our prime lenses, to really kind of improve performance. What you will see is in lenses like our 70-300, the 16-35, lenses like the 50mm f1.4 that have a more bespoke focusing mechanism built into them, where they're using either dual motors for focusing, or in situations where focus while zooming is something that DFD and contrast were not capable of until now we have the phase. Those lenses will get firmware updates, but lenses like the 24mm that I have here, there's no need for the firmware update for it. But ultimately, again, it just revolves back to, you want to make sure that you are turning the camera off when you're changing those lenses. And you now have a full suite of optics available from Leica, Sigma, and Panasonic that are just going to work. You don't have to think of them as quote-unquote third-party lenses anymore. They are first-party. They're designed around the same lens mount. They're designed around the same communication protocols. So they function as if they are supposed to. So let's go and address some questions that you all have now. All right, so we're back. So as you can see, like I said, I can't stress enough that the L-mount Alliance is really kind of coming into its own now with the S5 Mark II release. The fact that we have phase detect hybrid AF systems now added into our systems, the fact that we did all of the hard work while we were developing for things like recognition, for subject recognition, face and eye detection, body, head, animal, all that stuff, This is what allowed us to be able to come right out of the gate by adding phase in, that last kind of puzzle piece, and jumping right near to the top of the pack for performance, as opposed to just throwing phase on there and saying, okay, look, hey, here's phase, whatever, and we now have to develop all that other stuff in line with it. We did it backwards from what I think a lot of people were, which meant that when we came out with it, it's a much more reliable system. But it also means, like with all modern cameras, and I can't stress this enough, with all cameras, get in the habit of, if you're going to be changing lenses, make sure you turn your cameras off, change the lens, then turn them back on. That's just a PSA in proper way to maintain things, to keep dust off your sensors, to make sure that you're working with, you know, the best ideal situation you can. You should always get that in as a good practice. And I like this one question that came up here. It came in and says, what are the goals of LUMIX and Sigma? And I would add Leica into that as well. And the joke answer, of course, is what Sacred City pointed out there, which is world domination, of course. You know, it's like the whole Pinky in the Brain thing. What are we doing tonight? We're going to take over the world. But no, the truth is that the Element Alliance is about choice. It's about companies coming together and changing the paradigm that we work with in the photo and video industry. Everyone has always been in this locked off, walled garden set of lenses. And while, yes, we would love that you buy all of our lenses, because we have added benefits with ours that we offer that our competition doesn't. And yes, Sigma and Leica are still competition. You as a user don't have to necessarily feel handicapped or working with a hand tied behind your back because you want to go work with Sigma lenses, because maybe you like their series of lenses better. I mean, hell, I love their macro lens. I got a 105 millimeter that I love working with. It means that you have choice. So ultimately, you know, you pick up the S5 Mark II, you pick up an S5 Mark II X, you pick up whatever camera we've got coming out, and you want to use one of those other lenses, you want to spring for, you know, an Apo Summicron because you've always wanted to like a lens, go for it. It's going to work. It's going to be a premium series lens that's going to work native, because it is native. That is the innovation that you see in the Element Alliance. It is fundamentally breaking down what our industry has been built up as over the last, 100 years that the photography industry has been doing this. More than that, maybe. I'm horrible with history. But it's breaking that mentality that you don't need to be locked into a single brand. The cameras are tools. We prefer you to use our tool because we think we build the best tool out there and the best balance, as many have said out there. And I'm going to quote what a lot of people are saying at it because it's out there in the public. We're giving you the best valued camera that you can possibly get in the price point. $2,000 for a camera that's got features that, are only bested by cameras that are almost twice the price, if not more than twice the price. You're getting a solid platform, and now that if you're looking at lenses, don't look at just Panasonic LUMIX lenses. You have the entire ecosystem. It's over 100 plus lenses available. And if you're looking at that kind of information, I encourage you to go check out the S5 Mark II. And I'm going to drop this link in the chat. I encourage you to go take a look at the website that we created here in the US specifically for the S5 Mark II that talks about a lot of these things. It talks about some of the features that we have. One, it's a really cool looking website, if I don't say so myself. And yeah, it gives you some of that core information. It's got a spec breakdown at the bottom to show you. It talks about things like open gate that we're going to talk about over the next couple of weeks for multiple framing aspects and all of that fun stuff. So you've got an ecosystem that is rivaled pretty much by nobody in its innovation mentality. And as far as optics go, we're damn near the top as far as true optics that are on first party available for the system. Okay, let's see here. I've got time for one more question, and then I'm going to close this out here. Matt says... Matt says Sean likes a cluttered screen. You can remove that stuff if you want. Who was asking that? John was asking that. Yes, John. So what I'm showing here is that I'm showing you what we're actually doing behind the scenes. So I have face and eye detection on. But if I come into the menu, just go HDMI rec output and turn HDMI rec output off. Perfectly clear screen. There you go. All right. With that, let's see here. Max says, I love that you're moving towards an open mount. I don't think you're there yet, but logical progression. We move towards those principles in Micro Four Thirds mount. So the L mount is not a true open mount in the sense that anybody and all can design and build on it. It is something that is owned by Leica. So it's the mentality that when you're on this mount, the information is there for lens manufacturers. If a lens manufacturer gets part of the mount, they get that information, but that's ultimately up to the committee. That is way higher than Matter Eye as far as who gets to be in on that stuff. But yes, it is this mentality. It is very different than what we did on Micro Four Thirds. Micro Four Thirds, yes, it is a relatively open mount. You do have a lot of manufacturers that can make lenses and work and control on that, but there was a lot of still things that were independently done by each manufacturer that were a little different. The L mount is a little different, yeah. And then the L squared side of this, just to make things perfectly clear. L Mount Alliance is Leica, Sigma, Panasonic, DJI, and Lights as of today. As of doing this stream on January 12th, 2023, those are the companies that are part of the L Mount Alliance. The L squared technology is a separate entity between Panasonic and Leica about technology development. So the S5 Mark II and the S5 Mark II X are the first cameras to be released with the L squared technology engines and the first of that partnership there. Awesome. So with that, I'm going to have to give my voice a rest. Thank you all so much for tuning in. The questions that you all asked, the viewers, the comments, everything that you guys do, this is what makes Matt and I love our jobs. This is what helps us get out from the day in and day out of working in a corporate company. At least I think I can speak for Matt on that part as well. The community, you all are what drive us to be excited about these things, to push these ideas, and hopefully you guys all see that Matt, myself, Nick, also I see Nick's in the chat, everybody out there, anyone that's ever worked with Panasonic LUMIX, you guys know that we have your back. You guys give us recommendations, you give us points that we think, that you would like to see, bettered in our products. Know that we're being your champions with that. And yeah, outside of that, we will be back next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to be continuing more on the S5 Mark II. Next week, we'll be much heavier talking about the photography side. So if you do come in with video questions, know that I'm not going to prioritize those over the photo questions. But we're going to keep going at this. This is an exciting time. If you've been wanting to get into Panasonic LUMIX, now's the time to do it. Take a look at your local dealer. Take a look at the websites. Get yourself on the pre-order list. These cameras are going to be hard to get through the first period there. And yeah, outside of that, I hope all of you have an awesome rest of your day. I hope you all have an awesome rest of your weekend. And if you liked this video, if you liked the content and you like this community, please consider subscribing to the channel. Give us a like. Share this video out to your friends that are interested in this product. Even if they're not LUMIX fans, share this community out with them. We want to share and show everybody that we have this awesome community out there. And yeah, that's about all I can say with that now. So yeah, thank you everybody. I will see you all next week, Thursday at 2 p.m. Later.